Hello there, Grateful Gang. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Gratefully Living the Chronic Life. I am Lauren Zaleski. Welcome to the show. If you are new to us, I come to you every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we talk about various things relating to living our best lives. Technically, for people living with chronic conditions, although most of our topics really pertain to anybody who struggles in life, which is just about everybody. I have a fabulous guest tonight who I cannot wait to introduce you to. This is episode 49, believe it or not. So next week we've got the big 5-0. I am part of I run the group called Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain on Facebook. We are a closed private group, I should say. We are always looking for new members. If you feel like you live with a chronic condition, both physical, emotional, both depression, anxiety, all of that, anybody who hurts and is looking for a brighter way to kind of live in the solution and not stay stuck in the problem, we would love to have you. Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain. So I come to you from there. Many of you are watching from inside the group. For those of you that are watching on Facebook Live and YouTube, welcome. We are an interactive broadcast, so we highly encourage people to write in with your comments. Tell us, write in, say where you're watching, where you're coming from. We would love to hear from you. I break periodically for Q&A, and this guest tonight has such great information. I know that you're going to have questions and comments for her. If you've been watching for a while, welcome back. A couple months ago, we did a film screening of a film called This Might Hurt. And we also had I did an interview with the doctor who that film was focused on, Dr. Howard Schubiner. So if you were interested in that, you are very, very much going to be interested in my guest tonight, Michelle Wiegers. So let me bring her on. First I want to share with you who we're going to have on coming up. Oh, look, I lost the screen already. We've got a couple great guests coming up besides the wonderful guest we have tonight. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go. Present. Here we go. Maybe. We haven't, oops. Hang on, backwards. Okay, next week we have, oh my goodness, here we go. Let me get rid of this garbage. I was just telling Michelle how technical issues are my thing. Okay, next week we have an awesome author named Susan Spector coming on. She has this wonderful book called Keep Calm, It's Just a Brain Tumor. My Year of Wabi Sabi Healing. If you've never heard of Wabi Sabi, you are not alone. You are going to absolutely love what she has to say. I met with her this week and she is just awesome. So please tune in next Thursday at 8 o'clock. And after that we have, where is he? After that we have who I found Michelle through, James Cruz, who's the poet and editor of this wonderful book, How to Heal the World, Poems of Gratitude and Hope. I stalked James and he was more than happy to be stalked. He's going to be coming on the show. He's a wonderful poet, wonderful editor. And I was just telling Michelle, he's a very good friend of Michelle, our guest tonight. And he actually told me about Michelle and said she might be a good guest for your show. And she absolutely is. So James will be on in 2 weeks on the 24th. After that, we have a fan favorite and my good friend and mentor, Dr. Bruce Singer, is going to be on July 8th. Not sure what we're talking about yet, but we will let you know. And we've got some other great guests that we're lining up. So that's who we've got coming up. So without further ado, because we've got so much to talk about tonight, I want to bring on tonight's guest, Michelle Wiegers of Michelle Wiegers Coaching. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, Lauren. Great to be with you guys.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Before I read your bio, let's see. We've got some comments here I want to get to. Sometimes if I get too far behind on the comments, like I don't know what people are talking about. Sarah Garrison's here. Hello, Sarah. Glad you could be here with us. basic user. If you're watching from inside Attitude of Gratitude with chronic pain, because we're a closed group, this platform that I use, StreamYard, they require you to grant permission for them to be able to use your name and photo when you make a comment. So if you want to log out and log back in, you can do that. Or if you don't want to be bothered, next time you comment and you want your name said, you can just say who you are. But thank you for watching. Tammy Blizzard's here. Good evening. Hello. Glad to see so many familiar faces here. Pamela's here. Hello. Karen's here. Hello, Karen. Oh my goodness, at the lineup. I'm so excited. Yes, me too. So let me tell you about Michelle. She is just so awesome. We hit it off instant. We actually hit it off in email even before we met. So Michelle is a life coach and poet who found her creative voice and mind-body coaching work after recovering from decades of chronic pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, POTS, and pain from Ehler's Danlos syndrome, which is a really painful condition from what I understand. I know a lot of people in the group have it. Through Dr. Howard Schubiner's teachings, she healed her chronic symptoms and now uses mind-body science to help her clients and students discover the truth inside of their symptoms. She loves seeing chronic pain sufferers take their lives back through the mind-body approach and is committed to creating healing communities through her online group courses. Michelle is a certified professional coach with Awaken Coach Institute, holds a certificate in spiritual leadership from Leadership Transformations, Inc., has studied mindfulness-based stress reduction, awesome, me too, and trained in practical neuroplasticity and mind-body chronic pain treatment with the one and only Dr. Howard Schubiner. So it is such a pleasure to have you here, Michelle. You know, I've been so excited to have you on. So thank you for being here with us.
Thanks, Lauren. It is my delight. I did join your group, and I'm not on Facebook tons, but it's such a wonderful interchange and such an uplifting, positive atmosphere that you've created. I mean, we need positive, light-filled corners of the internet, and it's clear that your group is one. So I'm super grateful to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I also told you before you came on and when we met a few weeks ago that I would rather have no guest on the show than to have a guest that doesn't align with the message that I like to send out to our audience, which is, you know, just offering different tools that we can use to help us deal with these very real struggles of chronic pain and illness. And you know, when James gave me your name and I looked into what you did, I did stalk you. Actually, I went on your website and your Facebook page and saw, you know, you actually, I think you posted a link to the film This Might Hurt, and Howard Schubiner. I'm like, this was meant to be. This totally was meant to be. So why don't you tell us a little bit, you know, about like how you got here, how you got to be coaching and what your story is.
Sure. Well, maybe it's good to start with my story of chronic symptoms, because I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have those years, decades, really. Decades where I think the way I look at it now is that I just spent so much of my time and energy fighting against my body, fighting against pain, fatigue, of the fibromyalgia I was diagnosed with and lots of other diagnoses. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint when everything started because I did have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, symptoms when I was a child, but I had like back and foot pain in high school. I was finally diagnosed in college with IBS. I had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue diagnosis in like 2000. And I spent a lot of years just the pain and fatigue increasing dramatically over the number of years, despite trying all the things. I think so many people with chronic symptoms can identify with trying a bazillion different approaches to see what could work, right?
Yep.
Like physical therapy, chiropractic, acupuncture, traditional medical doctors, and all the specialists. I mean, you name it, medical, you know, nutritional supplements, naturopathic. I drank electrified water. Like I did foot fasts and candida detox. I mean, I like all kinds of diets, gluten-free, grain-free, sugar-free. I mean, I really went through so many things. And
because you're willing to try anything when you're in pain. You know, it may sound wacky when you look back on it, but when you're in pain, you're willing to try anything.
Yeah. And you do get to the point where you're like tired of everyone suggesting things. And you're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm hearing all that. And I did get to that point of that saturation of like, I'm not going to get out of this. You know, I was diagnosed with Ehler's Danlos syndrome in 2016. And when I really felt like, oh my gosh, this finally explains everything. It is a connective tissue disorder and it's hereditary. And I thought all of my pain was really Ehler's Danlos syndrome and a mix of that and fibromyalgia. And when I had that EDS is what the abbreviation is. When I had that diagnosis, I spiraled down in the symptoms so quickly to where I really came to the point where I was considering getting on disability because I was not getting around very much. I was housebound much of the time. I have 4 kids.
I was going to say, I know you have 4 children. They must have been pretty young at the time too.
Yeah. At that point, 2016. Yeah. My oldest would have been, now I have to do math, but
that's okay.
would have been 14, my oldest. So, yeah. And my youngest was around 8. And I also, after that diagnosis, I had the diagnosis of POTS. I don't know if any of your group has it's a tachycardia issue. It causes dizziness, lightheadedness. The last years, I was really facing this. At that point, I was really kind of left with, like we all do. I think a lot of us can identify with like trying to guess in one day what you can actually handle doing and what you need to leave for another day. You know, always like estimating, do I have enough energy for a shower? Or for a very gentle walk, or do I have energy to take my kids to the park, or is this a put them in front of the TV day and mom rests day because I'm not doing well, you know? So all of us constantly evaluating symptoms, trying to make the best of my choices, but always coming up against my limitations and on a regular basis. And that really came to this place where, I missed out on so much. It really was heartbreaking, not being able to like step into a career, but also especially not being able to be there for my kids always in the way that I wanted to. So I was really struggling in all of that. But we came to this point, my husband and I, where we were like, this is our reality. We just need to stop trying to fix this. And we kind of honestly, Lauren, it was almost like a practice of acceptance. And saying like, this is acceptance and surrender. Like I'm disabled to a certain degree and it's time to like figure out life, how to structure our lives with pain instead of always fighting against it and fighting against my body, being constantly frustrated, you know? And we had for years, like had someone cleaning our house, but at that point we were like, I couldn't go to stores anymore. I really couldn't cook very much. So we were having different people help us grocery shop and cook food. And, you know, I used a cane on a regular basis to help me walk and get around. Foot pain and sciatic pain, different things like that. And really what it came down to is I was very housebound. If I went to stores, I only went to ones that had the electric carts because that could help me get around. And my doctor was like, Michelle, you really need to get out more. I think you need your own wheelchair. And it was just that point of like surrender, like, is this what surrender means? That this is what it's come to. And she wrote me a prescription for that wheelchair. And I carried it in my purse for a few weeks. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for this milestone. It was so hard to come to that place, right?
That's a whole new level of acceptance, isn't it? Like there's acceptance of your illness, but that takes it to a whole new level for sure.
It really does. I finally did bite the bullet, called the home health PT and the medical equipment specialist. They came to my home. I didn't want my kids in the living room when they came because I just felt like, I don't know if I can handle them watching them be measured because they were measuring me, you know, for their wheelchair. And when I got to that point, I was worse than I'd ever been. The sciatic pain was so bad and the POTS symptoms, the dizziness was so bad that, like I said, it really was disabling.
And how many years ago was this again, Michelle? Just a couple of years ago?
So that was in 2017.
Wow. Okay.
February 2017. Yeah. So it was really kind of what I look back now as a rock bottom, but I didn't look at it quite so negatively. Well, I definitely struggled with acceptance, but it was also filled with hope because I was like, I'm going to get outside my house again. Maybe we can find trails in the woods that are, wheelchair accessible.
Yeah.
There was like, oh, I can get a little measure of freedom back. That's where I was. And really, I've been, I think, worse than I'd ever been, but it wasn't the end of my story. At the time, I thought it felt like it was. But if you had told me then, I don't know if I could have believed you that, I had no idea there was another version of my story coming. I had no idea. And it's really where I was. This is exactly the environment I was, the surrendered, getting measured for a wheelchair place when I was introduced to this mind-body approach. And of course, I had already given up trying all the things. So I was like, I'm not trying all this, this is not work for me.
You get tired of it. It's exhausting. And with each thing that doesn't work, there's just that, it like chips away at your hope, doesn't it? It's like that extra level of disappointment. And you get to a point where you kind of don't want to try anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it is a roller coaster of like up and then down. And in fact, when I found out about the mind-body approach, my husband, I told him about it. A friend of mine who had all the same things I did, like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, EDS, POTS, gluten intolerance, all of it. She reached out to me. She said, I found this book, Unlearn Your Pain by Dr. Schubiner. And you're not going to believe this, but I'm better. And I'm like, no, I don't believe you. What are you?
Yeah.
You have the same thing I do. These are permanent conditions. And, but she sent me a link to the book and his website and some other links like Dr. John Sarno's 2020 episode and anyway, some other things that I have a lot of those resources on my website. If anyone wants to look into some of those, they're free on my website.
I put that up here.
But my husband was like, I can't hope with you, Michelle. He's like, I've been down this road so many times with you. And like very graciously, he was my partner in all of this and helped take care of me for so many years. And he was like, I can't hope one more time. I was like, well, that's okay. Are you okay with me diving into this? Because I think it was like I know it's funny to say, but it's like I was set up. I was given the perfect scenario to try it because I had this friend who had healed from this approach. And I knew that in my back of my mind, she'd always been like a little bit worse than me. So it gave me that kind of faith that, oh my gosh, maybe this really could work for me. Maybe even though I had accepted that I was disabled and I'd really kind of given up fighting, I couldn't let go of this nagging, like if it worked for her, is there something I don't know about my pain? And she talked about it being like a stress-based, emotional-based. And at first I'm like, that sounds like you're saying I'm making this up or it's all in my head. And this is very real physical pain and symptoms that I have. So how could this be from emotion? But she talked about it like we all feel emotions in our bodies. If we get embarrassed, our cheeks can turn bright red. And that's a physical change in our physical body based on an emotion.
Interesting. I never thought about that before.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't either, that what we feel emotion in the body. But we do. If you get nervous, you can get sweaty. If you have a conversation coming up, you're like in conflict with someone, you can even get sick to your stomach. These are all very human, normal things that happen to us. And so this mind-body science approach is based on that, but it also shows how the brain goes into this protective mode on our behalf. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but we talked about maybe sharing a video that would explain this a little bit, Lauren.
Yeah.
That would be a good idea to share.
Yeah, let's see if we can get that to share, shall we? All right, here we go. This is an awesome, one of those cool doodle. Let's see if I can get this. And hopefully there will be sound. Let's say full screen.
There are 70 million people in this country with chronic pain, but many of them don't have to be. Recent studies show that some forms of chronic pain are not actually due to physical problems in the body, but but rather learned neural pathways in the brain. Neural pathways are made up of thousands of brain cells that are organized for a specific purpose. They help us learn new behaviors and activities. Think of a baby trying to walk for the first time. His little brain has no idea what to do, and he falls. But with practice, his brain learns. Push off, lean slightly forward, keep your balance, step, and repeat. With enough repetition, he develops the neural pathways to know just what to do. We develop neural pathways for everything. When we learn to walk, when we learn to type, when we learn how to ride a bike. And once we develop neural pathways, they're stored into memory. Like they say, you never forget how to ride a bike. And just as the brain can learn and remember activities, the brain can learn and remember pain. Imagine that you're out driving. You pull up to a red light, and as you come to a stop, you hear the sound of screeching brakes. You look in the rearview mirror just in time to see the driver behind you, cell phone in hand, with a look of horror in his eyes. You brace. At the moment of impact, your head jerks back, and you feel a sharp twinge in your neck. The next morning, you wake up with neck pain and stiffness. You've suffered a whiplash injury. For most people, after 4 to 6 weeks, the injury heals and the pain goes away. But for some of us, even though the body has recovered, the pain continues. So how do we explain the persistence of pain even after an injury has healed? This brings us back to neural pathways. When you get injured, the body sends danger signals to the brain, and you develop neural pathways to help process the pain experience. But even after the injury heals, these neural pathways remain and can generate pain. This is how acute injuries can turn into chronic pain, even in instances where the body has fully recovered. You can even develop pain without an initial injury. By way of example, here's one of our favorite stories. A few years ago, there was a construction worker out at a job site who stepped on a nail. The nail went all the way through his boot and out the other side. He was in agony. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital. The doctors rushed him to the ER. They pried the boot off, but the nail had gone right in between his toes. Didn't even cause a scratch. When the brain perceives physical damage to the body, it can generate pain, even in the absence of an actual injury. This is actually more common than you might think. A group of researchers in Germany conducted a placebo car crash study. One by one, individuals were placed in a car and given the impression that they were rear-ended, but there was no actual physical impact to the vehicle. Even though there was no way the participants could have been injured, a month after the study, 10% of them had neck pain that they attributed to the accident. Their brains perceived an injury, which led to pain, but the pain wasn't caused by physical harm. It was generated by neural pathways in the brain. More and more studies are finding that our brains have the capacity to generate physical pain. Pain generated by learned neural pathways is very real and can be very debilitating. But the good news is, just as this pain can be learned, it can be unlearned. And in future videos, we'll show you how.
Well, that sure is interesting. I love the way that explained that. I mentioned to you that I'm a visual learner, and I know when Dr. Schubiner was on, he talked a lot about that as well. But interesting, the guy with the nail through the shoe he really gets me. That's so fascinating.
Exactly. So he like sees that nail and of course freaks. But to see that there was no injury, but he had excruciating pain, because it's really based, the mind-body approach is not, sometimes people hear that and they're like, is this just positive thinking? Are you just like wishing your pain away?
Right.
It's not quite that. It's not that actually at all, but it's this approach where we have the brain makes these learned associations based on our lives and our history. And so like that guy, for example, you know, his brain was interpreting, oh gosh, this is horrible. Like this nail was through my foot. And so the brain immediately, all pain comes from the brain. Like, it's not like if we cut our finger, it's not like it lives in our finger, right? It sends a signal to the brain and then back. And the brain says, oh gosh, we should cut our finger. And then it sends the pain. So in that case, his brain was sending pain based on the information it had, which it looked really bad. Once his brain could see it didn't actually pierce his foot, that calmed the danger signal in his brain, and the brain stopped sending the pain. So that's the power of this approach. And it's it's nuanced. I mean, there's different layers to it. Part part of the approach is definitely finding out what learned associations we have going on in our brains. What we, I guess for me, it was like, what I learned was that there were things like a host of associations that I had. Basically, my brain was remembering everything, right? And so those learned associations, they were really creating these neural pathways in my mind where, like, if I believed or expected that I would get pain or symptoms with a certain activity or event, I actually would. And at the time, it just seemed like because of the diagnosis that I had, it made sense. But it turns out the diagnoses that I've already shared with you are actually very typical. They're on the common mind-body diagnosis list, like fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, and others like migraines, insomnia, even anxiety and depression, actually. All of these are found that there's really not something like medically like a tissue damage or a structural problem like a tumor or an infection or a fracture. And this is why, like, I don't know how many people in this group can identify with this, but I went through years of testing. I mean, I don't even want to know if you added up all the money that my insurance company paid over the years, probably like millions. I don't know, of all the testing that I had, and how many times they would come back and say,
nothing.
Would say, there's nothing wrong with you. I have good news. And I wanted to be like, I want to punch you. I have something wrong with me. Like, you're wrong.
I was just saying that to somebody just the other day. I'm like, part of you, of course, it's a good thing they don't find something. And then the other part of you is like, oh my gosh, am I crazy? Because I'm feeling this. And then I'll have a good day and I'll be like, well, no, I'm not. Obviously, I'm not crazy because I'm better today than. But
it's confusing.
It's very confusing.
I felt like, for me, I really did believe in my heart, they're going to find it someday. Like, it felt, before I had given up on finding the cure, in my story, I really felt like that there was something majorly wrong. And now what I know is that there was something majorly wrong, but it wasn't something, the problem wasn't in my physiological body. It was that I was really repressing a lot of strong emotions. And when we hold emotions like anger, rage, fear, grief, shame, when we hold those down in our bodies, those are really powerful, strong emotions. And they don't just dissipate, they affect us. If you think about even just feeling anxiety about something coming up, like a certain event or something, you can feel like tightness in your shoulders. You can feel it in your body. But when we get stuck in the, it's the neural pathway links are one way to describe it. Another way to describe it, and it's not that they're in conflict, both is happening, is that our brains decide that those difficult life experiences, like trauma from childhood or difficult experiences in any time of our lives from the past, or even stress in our present life. And I will add too, stress from living with a chronic condition is also traumatizing.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because nobody really talks about that. And when, there's a lot of talk about PTSD and all that. And I'm like, living through what, I don't want to generalize and say most, but probably most of us deal with it. That's trauma in and of itself. It really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think, I look back and to look back on like 27 years and probably like 17 of those with my kids, going through, well, not 17, but 15 at least, 13. I don't know. I'm getting my numbers wrong. At least a decade or more with my kids also suffering, my husband also suffering, income suffering because I couldn't work. It's a
family. It's a whole family thing. It affects everybody. Yeah. I know when Dr. Schubiner was on, he said, just wanted to throw this out there, that this approach does not work for everybody with chronic pain. It's for specific conditions. So this isn't saying that this will work for everybody, but it will work for a lot of the conditions that you talked about, right?
Right. Yeah, you're right. There's absolutely, when you have a physiological medical diagnosis based on a structural problem or disease process, it's not going to help a cancerous tumor, and that,
Right.
it's not going to help those major problems. When I first learned about it, I didn't think it would help everything I had, to be honest. I thought, well, maybe this approach will take away 20% of my symptoms. How awesome would that be? And then I was like, well, maybe I could get like 70%. So like when I stepped into it, I honestly, Lauren, I didn't believe it, hook, line, and sinker.
Well, who would? I mean, it sounds crazy.
It really does.
Yeah,
it really does.
But then again, so does gratitude. And then people come into our group, and I don't want to say the group cures people. Of course we don't, but it does help them deal with their pain better, deal with their emotions better. And a lot of times their pain lessens from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge testimony to being present with gratitude, and then letting whatever emotions come up in the context of that. Because sometimes to get to gratitude, we have to move through grief and a lot of symptoms or emotions, right?
Yeah. Before we move on to like, the nuts and bolts of what it is that you do, let's take some comments here. That was Sandy Montgomery. Hi, Sandy. Karen Grossoff's here. Hello. My biggest fan, my dad. Hello, Dad. Hello from a fellow zebra.
That's the Ehler's Danlos diagnosis.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what a zebra was.
Yeah. Hi there,
Michelle.
Thank you.
Greetings. Welcome, Michelle. I'm so excited to learn from you tonight. Look, you've got some very excited people. Hi, Denise. Glad you're here. Mind over matter. Is it really mind over matter, though? What would you say to that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I can talk about that in a bit if you want.
Okay. And so what I'm getting from this is that it's not a cure, but a pain management tool.
It could be either, depending on your circumstance.
That's good. And here's my BFF from high school, Tracy Berger. This is fascinating from Bergies. So yeah, so we can talk about mind over matter and pain management tool. Knock yourself out. What do you have to say?
Okay. So mind over matter is definitely I'm going to think it and so it will happen. But when you have mind body symptoms coming up in your body, there really is, it's a subconscious process. So there's no way for me to when you initially learn about this, you're not just thinking positive thoughts and then changing your physiological makeup out of that. It doesn't mean that positive thoughts don't have power. They actually do. And positive affirmations are part of the recovery process for many people. We put them in my course that I teach. But what's really happening is that in the video, it talked about how the danger signal gets set off in the brain. So when we have difficult, stressful experiences that create emotions in our lives, difficult ones that I mentioned before, like rage, fear, shame, big anger, those kinds of things, those are basically the proverbial bear in the woods. If you think about if you're in the woods, you see a bear, your physical body will start running away from that animal before your conscious mind decides, oh crap, I need to run. Have you ever been in one of those scenarios? Maybe it wasn't bear in the woods, it was something else, but where you're in a dangerous situation and your body is going into automatic response mode before you even fall, right? Yeah,
fight or flight mode.
The fight, flight, or freeze. That's exactly it, Lauren. So this approach, the mind-body approach, is based in the fight, flight, or freeze response, where the brain, basically based on past history, the brain becomes sensitized to, let's just say, let me give you a really concrete example. Let's say in the home that you were growing up in, you had a good childhood experience, but one of your caregivers or parents yelled a lot and it was really fear-inducing for you. And so yelling and anger became this very negative association. You don't do that because it makes children feel a certain way, and so basically you kind of subconsciously make this decision that any kind of a yelling or expressing of anger is not safe because it wasn't safe for you. And doesn't that make sense that you would subconsciously make that decision, right?
Yeah.
So then what happens what happens when we are mistreated and we feel anger? It's one of the most difficult emotions to be present to, especially if we're mistreated by someone we deeply love. And so we tend to push anger down, or we don't know how to deal with it. And so our brains literally have surmised from childhood or previous experiences in our adult life, anger is dangerous. And so then our brains were like, oh no, we don't go there. And literally, like, it's kind of sounds strange to say it this way, but our brains are protecting us from what it perceives as dangerous.
Yeah.
And so that emotion, that repressed emotion, or it could be something that we're like slightly aware of, but usually it's like we have no idea we have that extent of emotion. I mean, when I look at how disabling my symptoms were, and that it was literally all emotion, I fully cured. I don't have those symptoms anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. Now, I will say, if I get some pain, it only ever comes in my right shoulder blade, and then I know, oh, I'm ticked off at someone. Like, I know I'm not in pain. It's like this signal, and I have to get really present to myself, and that's where mindfulness, slowing down and listening, and really using silence, meditation, prayer for me, like really getting present to saying, what's going on for me right now, stress-wise? What am I dealing with emotionally right now? Because I know that there's nothing wrong with my shoulder blade, and I know that this is pain, and like pain from the mind body, my brain's freaked out here. And it also can be, I just want to say, I didn't mention this before, it can also be from the way we treat ourselves. There's actually a whole mind body, or another phrase is called tension myoneural syndrome. So if you start reading about this and you see TMS, mind body syndrome, and TMS is the same thing.
Okay.
Not to confuse everyone, but some of those typical mind body personality traits of like perfectionism, people pleasing, putting pressure on ourselves, that actually feels dangerous to our brains too. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, right? Like,
I never thought about that before. And I can tell you that we have so many in the group that come to the live chats that, even though in the group we don't specifically talk about our conditions, in our live chats we do. And we tend to put other people before us, and we have a hard time saying no. We're empaths, and we do harbor a lot of those feelings for sure.
Exactly.
In general. Yeah.
And that I actually teach one of the class sessions that I teach in my course is all on personality traits. I'm teaching it next week on Tuesday for the course that's the cohort that's taking it now. And it's one of my favorite classes because it shows you how far self-compassion goes. Like, we're often harder on ourselves than we would be on anyone else.
Sure.
Very like good, kind, and empathetic people. And that in and of itself, that kind of pressure where we always have to be the helper, or we always have to be, it can create a place where that feels dangerous to our brains because we're asking too much of ourselves. And that in and of itself can perpetuate chronic symptoms as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that makes so much sense. And I never thought about that. Even when you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, I never thought about that. It makes so much sense. I mean, I knew it caused stress, but I never thought about it as the brain protecting us from that danger, of course.
Yeah. And it's like, if the brain's going to say, this doesn't work for us, like put up a boundary, so to speak. But it literally is the fight, flight, or freeze response. So we don't know it's happening. And that's why I went for decades without having any idea. And honestly, up to this point, the medical practitioners that I'd seen, and that I think the majority of us see, they don't know this approach. So it's not yet mainstream. That's what Dr. Schubiner is working so hard to make mainstream. And the more and more doctors are aware of this. There's a physical therapist in our town who saw me when I was disabled. Then I healed, and I was like, you have to hear what happened to me. And she actually went to Schubiner's training in Colorado. Really? Yeah, for PTs. She just messaged me today. She's like, I have a new victory. She's like, I had a man with extreme sciatic pain and for 5 years. And We talked about the mind-body approach, and it just took a couple sessions, and now he's basically pain-free. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Crazy.
So it does, it's really powerful what the backflips the brain does to protect us from the thing that is perceived as dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And once we start to identify those things, it can be really powerful in addressing.
That's what you work with your clients, is working on identifying those things.
So you can really do this alone. I mean, you don't have to work one-on-one with someone. And I'm here because I want to spread this message. Right. First and foremost, really what helps you heal is first the mind-body science, just to understand what's actually going on scientifically in your brain. Because if you don't understand that, it's really hard to believe any of this. And then, I mean, what helped me was, I think actually, you have a gratitude Facebook page. I really think that like a daily practice of gratitude for me laid the groundwork to teach me how to slow down, to actually notice the positive things in my day. And I think that got me ready to like be prepared to really heal in this approach, because I was more ready to accept what was there. Like I had gotten to that point where, like I said, we gave up on trying all the random things to get better. But what I didn't have any idea was that my pain was really coming to me with a message. Like once I started listening to it and attuning to it, I found that there was a whole lot of emotional pain inside the physical pain. And so what the healing path is not a like start with point A and get to point B and then you're done. It's a different journey for everyone, but it really is developing different practices like mindfulness, journaling. Well, after you really get a solid basis of the mind-body science and what's actually happening, then you get into the practices like mindfulness, journaling, mind-body meditations and somatic meditations. Schubiner's book, I know he shared part of his book with your group.
Yeah, if you're in AOG, Attitude of Gratitude, with chronic pain, I'll put it up here. If you're in our group, if you go into our group files, he gave us the first 5 chapters of his workbook for free for our group.
Awesome.
Yes. So, you can find it there in the files.
So the second part of his book is a lot of writing exercises. And the goal is to really like identify what emotions are being held in the body and then express and release them. It's not like, I had gone through, honestly, Lauren, years of counseling. So I felt like I was a very emotionally aware person.
Yeah.
Like, this couldn't be me. I've already done all the counseling work. But what I didn't know was how much I had repressed because it was actually trapped in my body. So using expressive writing, somatic meditations, and other tools we teach in my course, it really, the goal becomes ways to release that emotion. So you don't have to like relive all these things. And you, even too, I do want to just mention that so many of the people I work with, they don't have major big trauma from childhood or adulthood.
Really?
There's some things that are like maybe the personality traits, or there can be even just difficult experiences that the brain interprets as dangerous. So we can think, that wasn't actually that big of a deal, but our brains are interpreting it as dangerous, and that's enough to create symptoms. So really when stress is the basis for why we have them in the first place, when we like attune to ourselves, we get to like start to think honestly, like, and this is a lot to do in one, I wouldn't expect anyone to do this immediately, but as you dive into this approach, you start to realize I have a lot of assumptions and conclusions about my body physically. And what I try to work with my clients is like, let's start to think emotionally and circumstantially. Like, what was going on in your life when that major flare happened? Or what were you thinking about this situation? And there's a lot of like life mapping, symptom journal, timeline kind of stuff where we start to look at what was happening and what was I feeling in that, and what was the symptom coming up. And you start to make those links, and you can start to be like, I never saw this before. When you start to think emotionally and stress-based about the symptoms you feel. I want to repeat, I can't even say it enough. When I say this, it would be really normal to feel really defensive and be like, what the heck, woman? Like, this is not me. Like, because that's how I felt. Yeah. So if you feel that way, don't worry. Like, that is really normal to feel that defensiveness, because it sounds like what maybe some practitioners have said, like, oh, you just have stress and difficult emotions, so this is your fault. This is not your fault.
You're depressed. I got that in the very beginning, 20 years ago. You seem depressed to me. I'm like, well, I'm depressed because I don't feel good. But it's it's almost like some of the doctors gaslight you, and which makes things even worse. Exactly. So I want to say, before we go even any further, Michelle has kindly offered, I know you guys are going to have a ton of questions. I can see there's already some coming in. Michelle has kindly offered next Thursday. She's offering for members of Attitude of Gratitude with chronic pain. Let's see if I can get this up here. There's Dr. Singer. There it is. She's doing a free Q&A with her next Thursday, June 17th, from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find out if you're in the group. I actually posted the link to the event in there today, but you can find it on her Facebook page, which is Michelle Wiegers Coaching on Facebook. So if you can ask questions tonight, certainly. But if you want to get into more specific about you in particular, or anything else, I highly encourage you to do that. And thank you, Michelle, for offering that, because I know people are going to have a lot of questions. It's very thoughtful of you to offer that. But please feel free tonight if you have any questions for her. Let's see some of these comments that are coming in. Heather Gray is the zebra, and I'm also the one who asked the question. Thank you, Heather. Definitely listening, but I came in late. What is it she's talking about? Well, you can watch the replay. She's talking about the mind-body connection in relation to living with chronic pain and illness. I'm not sure when you tuned in, but hopefully by now you've gotten a little bit of the gist of it. But as soon as the episode is over, it'll be available for replay for you to see from the beginning. And my other biggest fan, my mom, says it's amazing. Yes, it is. Michael Editon Ray, Susan Knuckles. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for being here tonight and gifting more time next week. Yes, thank you, Michelle. Very thoughtful. I think I did I get Susan? I saw Susan Knuckles said earlier, and I'm not sure if I got her. Hi, Susan. Thank you for being here. So please feel free to ask any questions, because I know this is a whole lot to digest. Can you say again what conditions that you feel that this helps?
Yeah, there's quite a long list, but Dr. Schubiner and other mind-body practitioners have really come together to make a common list of these syndromes. And if you go to the ppdassociation.org, it has those listed there. You can reach out to me. I can send that link to you. But it helps condition. They find that the majority of people with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, insomnia, even interstitial cystitis, food sensitivities.
Really?
Yes, I was gluten intolerant, dairy intolerant, sugar-free, mostly grain-free.
Wow.
And let's see. Now, if you're actually allergic to something, obviously that's different.
Right. He mentioned some back pain too, I believe.
Oh yeah. So yeah, for sure. Chronic back pain, actually, it's a huge part of it. In the class I teach, there's a section on really understanding how many of the MRI and X-ray findings that we see, like bulging discs or spinal stenosis or other things like this, when those show up, there's studies done that say that there are people walking the earth with all of those diagnoses and no pain, and that they're actually normal abnormalities that are findings, and that Schubiner believes that like 70 to 80% of chronic back pain is a mind-body process.
Wow.
That's an estimate on his part based on how many people he's seen heal. It's like phenomenal.
I mean, how many people do you know with I know so many people with chronic back pain that are like debilitated. They're out for weekends, weeks, you know, with this back pain. Here's a question. Does this work for chronic diabetic pain?
So that is an interesting question. So obviously diabetes is a medical condition, and so it's not going to cure diabetes itself. Could there be chronic pain that is habitually happening with diabetes that's expanded on because of the mind-body process? And what I mean by that is that there is sometimes a fear, pain, fear cycle going on in the neural pathways. So when we get pain with a certain activity, the next time we do it, we're expecting and afraid that that pain's going to come again. And so could it be helped? It could a little bit. I couldn't say how much percentage and that kind of thing. So generally, no, it's not going to help diabetes itself, but could there be some learned neural pathways that are expanding the experience of pain, where maybe the actual pain's this big, but the fear comes up around it, and then the pain grows? That's a possibility for sure.
She's saying it is neuritis.
Okay.
From sudden onset after DKA.
I wouldn't really be able to speak to that. I should say, and I always share this with clients and students, that I'm not a medical practitioner, so I can't speak to like specific medical diagnoses, but I do often reach out to Dr. Schubiner if I ever have medical questions. He's so gracious.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
He is. Yeah. So if you have these kind of questions, you can definitely explore that.
Again, if you know, if anybody has more questions that we're able to, you know, to do in the next 10 minutes, please come next Thursday. Michelle is offering this wonderful time for us. Here's another question. I worked through Unlearn Your Pain and have uncovered so much about myself. My chronic back pain is so much more manageable. Wow, Shannon. It takes a lot of work, but it is so worth it. Trusting in the process is so important to me too.
Wow.
Wow, Shannon. Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that.
That's such a powerful testimony.
Yep.
To be able to see. Yep. And you know, I love the way you said that, Shannon. You've uncovered so much about yourself. That's so true for me too. Like when I first learned about this approach, Dr. Schubiner had said that his patients get more excited about what they learned about themselves than even that they don't have pain anymore. And I was like, that is not possible. Like, no way that's happening to me. But it actually did. I had not just, a lot of understanding about who I was and about, but also I had this explosive creative writing and poetry come out of me when I started deeply attuning to who I was on the inside. And that was the shock of my life. I knew I liked creative writing, but I didn't know I had that well within me. So finding our deeper and truer selves is a part of this healing journey in the mind-body approach, and anyone can benefit from that, no matter who you are. So we actually have people who take our course who just deal with anxiety. They don't have physical symptoms, and it helps anxiety so much, the approaches that we do. So it's really it's really a holistic approach.
Your course, I know you're going through a course right now, and you just announced, I was going to share, if I can, you just announced your one for the fall, even though you don't, she made it clear to me that she doesn't care about signing people up, but I want to offer it to anybody who might be interested. Her next 10-week online course starts September 9th through November 18th. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what the 10-week entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 6 live sessions, teaching sessions, and then 2 Q&A sessions. It's 15 hours of live teaching, but we actually have people who join the course who can't join live, literally people from all around the world. So you can either be there live or watch the recordings. We have a course learning site where there's like a student forum. We have all the course materials. We give like 12 different somatic mind-body meditations to help you heal. There's like 20 handouts to help you dive into your story and what's really going on in your body. Healing videos, podcasts, articles. We really just make this whole systemic approach. And Rebecca and I created the course, and Rebecca teaches it with me now too, and she's co-creating it with me. And she reversed severe chronic fatigue, interstitial cystitis, and a few other things. Anyway, so we both give our all to this course, and we feel like it's really all you need is going through this course. It's really teaches you like to understand why symptoms are showing up in the body, to be able to like even rule in that, is this a mind-body cause? And then if it is, how do I understand what's triggering me and causing these things? And how do I understand like to access the emotions that might be under it, or the self-pressure that might be creating it? So we go through all of those things in the course, and we do it in a way that you have a community to work with you. So there's a student forum, people are supporting each other along the way. So yeah, that's a little bit about it.
I love that. Gosh, unfortunately, we only have a couple more minutes, but before we go, first of all, I just want to put it up one more time for anybody who might be tuning in late next week, next Thursday, from 4 to 5 p.m. If you go to Michelle's Facebook page at Michelle Wiegers Coaching, and I did post it in the group, Attitude of Gratitude, Chronic Pain as well. Next Thursday, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Michelle will be available live to answer more questions. But I was wondering if you could take us out with one of your poems, because she mentioned that she tapped into her poetry. So in 2 weeks, we have James Cruz on, the guy I stalked, who wrote How to Heal the World, Poems of Gratitude and Hope. And when I talked to Michelle initially, she's like, if you like that book, you're going to love this one. He did this one last year called Healing the Divide, Poems of Kindness and Connection. And she didn't tell me she had a poem in here. I think actually more than one, maybe, right?
I have one in each book. Yeah.
Oh, you have one. Okay. So, she's a very gifted poet as well. So I thought it might be nice if you could take us out with one of your poems, if you don't mind.
Sure. I will read this one. This was a few years after I healed initially, but I was still dealing with a lot of anxiety, and used a lot of practices for helping with that. And so this is called In the Window. Even here in this hotel room, I pull back the layers of drapes, pushing the chair over to the window to drink in the light and listen. I watch the cars race through traffic below, and soon I'll be on that road. But first, I stop to sense each part of my body, to see if my toes are digging into the soles of my furry boots, if I'm clenching my teeth together or holding in more breaths than I am exhaling. My eyelids tap out their anxious stance, reminding me I've been through years of chronic pain, desperate not to return to that way again. Maybe I need them to twitch for the rest of my life, to remember to open myself to this light passing through glass, how I need the space to breathe, to remind myself I am safe and loved, that I am here, taking in one strong breath, releasing it back into the room, where the hum of the refrigerator tells me that even when I pause, the world will keep going.
That is a perfect way to end this. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank
you
for having me.
Michelle Wiegers, for being here with us. Thank you. I highly encourage everybody, please join her on next Thursday from 4 to 5 if you have further questions. I mean, I think we could fill up 6 hours worth of questions and comments. Great topic. Thank you both so much. Love it. Thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful guest. Thank you for all of you who joined us live and contributed tonight. Thank you for those of you who are going to watch on the replay. Thank you as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe. I always forget to say that because I'm not one of those like, hey, hit subscribe. But yeah, you can subscribe and then it'll let you know when I'm on the air each Thursday. So thank you, Michelle. It's been a pleasure. Please come back anytime you want. We would love to have you back.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me tonight, Lauren. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. See you next Thursday. Peace and love. Take care.